2000, that one that's right above your head in the white shirt, skinny pasta. That was my first headshot.
At 13 over at the Roar Media. You guys are awesome. And yes, that was a beautiful intro. Thank you so much, Oz, for building that for us. I love it.
Oz put that up there. I have a bunch of people who don't have, who are not premium members. I got to send them your link, which I'm going to do right now. And everybody, if you get a chance to do that, go ahead over. You're only on Rokfin. We're not on YouTube. I can't tell people to get off YouTube and go to Rokfin. This will premiere tomorrow on Roar Media's YouTube and on the Convo Couch's YouTube on Saturday. That's how we're going to do it. But we're really trying to build this network right over here because this network really allows us to say the things we want to say, do the things we want to do. They don't suppress our voices. And it's just really great. They take care of their content creators because they want us to keep going and telling stories. And this is a story that it gets no time in the news cycle whatsoever. I just want to say welcome to everybody who's here for the first episode of To Hell and Back. It's an in-depth look at addiction and recovery too as well, because my co-host for this one, you can see her right over there, the lovely Shanda Masta, the accidental activist who's just amazing, who's had such an amazing story in her life, and she's going to be the co-host and really kind of drive the bus on this journey. Shanda, anything to say?
Yeah, I mean, I'm really excited to get out there and tell my story, but I got to admit, I'm a little bit scared. When I first got into politics way back, years and years ago with Bernie in 2015 and 16, who was I to go to these political meetings and put my opinion out there? I was just a drug addict, poor person. I felt like that section of society was never represented. The people that I knew, the people that lived in the ghetto with me, that were addicted, that were facing these problems, we had firsthand knowledge, but nobody ever listened to us, the actual people, And so I started going to political meetings and I found my power in speaking my truth. And really, that's what's helped carry me through this journey, through everything I've been through with the movement. And I'm so excited to be able to get out there. I see friends still out on the streets. I'll be at the casino or something. I'll run into somebody and they'll say, "We're so proud of you for speaking for us. Keep fighting, keep out there, keep doing what you're doing." And that just empowers me more to want to get out there and speak the truth, because this is happening in everybody's towns. It's happening all across our country. It's non-discriminate. It's middle class. It's poor because it's coming from a trusted source that we've been, trained our whole entire lives. You listen to your doctor. And so once we get into the real meat of this tonight's show, I think we're going to see just how much that's affecting America.
A lot of reasons why I wanted to do the show, and that's what we're going to open up with too as well, because today's first episode, we're going to go over Shanda's story and what led her to be where she's at today and speak the way she speaks and everything she's went through. It's just an amazing story. But the reason why I wanted to start the show was that I had a friend, an old school, when I first got out of the Navy and I was in South Florida, and I was there for about a year before I moved off to California because I wanted to go to California, wanted to be an actor, all that stuff, yada, yada, yada. And I met a young lady by the name of Mandy. And confession, we were boyfriend and girlfriend for a little time, but more than anything, she was just an amazing person, an amazing friend. And when I left to go to California, she left to go to Georgia to be with her family. Her brother was just getting out of what do you call juvie or whatnot? I don't really want to tell much about his story. I don't really have his permission, but she went to be with her family and ate her family. And over the course of the last 20 years, I've spoke to her 3 times in our life up until this last year. And it was really odd because it was once every 6 years. I'd speak to her, I'd see how she's doing, we would talk, and then next month I'd try to get a hold of her and I wouldn't. And then like 6 years later, out of the blue, she would find me again, we'd speak, we'd talk, and then she just gone ghost again. The third time it happened again. We spoke, we talk, and except this time, a month later, when I called her again, she picked up. And we've been speaking consistently for the last year. I actually got to see her last year. But her story of what she dealt with, of, you know, just going in and out of rehab, of being addicted, going in and out of the system. You know what I'm saying? Like, she can't come visit me right now. She has to stay in Georgia and complete the program she's on, you know, and it was all from addiction, you know, and the thousands of dollars she spent giving money to the courts, and having to stay clean, and that struggle. And I really I felt something inside, you know, and we saw in 2016 when everything heated up between Trump and Bernie and Hillary and the whole 9 yards, we saw a big racial divide, right? And we saw a lot of people, you know, pointing the finger at each other, talking about the history of racism, you know what I'm saying, and whatnot. And then I encountered a lot of poor white people, you know, who just felt like, and it was really so hard to describe, you know, I'm talking about, Shanda, these people didn't have self-worth, you know what I'm saying? They felt so down on themselves, so awful. And then when I visited Mandy about 8 months ago, I think it was 6 to 8 months ago, I went to North Georgia, and I was just shocked what I saw. You know, people born into severe poverty, born into addiction. And then we finally met, me and Shanda, in person when we went to the protest in Washington. And I specifically heard Shanda talk about how awful the withdrawals were, you know, how it was the hell and back the withdrawals are. And it was a life-changing moment for me that, you know, you also talked briefly about how this hit American society, how people trust that man in a white coat. And I said to you, I said, Shanda, we have to do a show on this. We have to talk about this. 70,000 people die every year from the opioid addictions, right? We have to talk about this because, you know, society has us in a death blender. And whether you believe in capitalism or not, you know, people become a dollar sign, and they become, you know, a price tag of sorts, a number in which the elites can make money hand over fist, hand over fist, hand over fist. And one thing that you've said to me, and it stuck with me, is like, you know, Big Pharma doesn't want customers. They want addicts. And that's what led us to be here today.
Yeah, I'm excited to touch on all of these things that you've pointed out, and I got to say, it's so moving, you know, that you say that, yeah, it hits you in the heart, you know, it hits you in the gut, because we need more people to feel that and have that compassion. We don't treat addiction with compassion at all in this country. You know, it's another one of those pull yourselves up by your bootstraps types of mentalities. And that is not the right approach for addiction at all, especially when we have addiction on the massive scale that we have it on now, and what we will in the future, because Big Pharma is mighty and they are powerful and they have control.
Yeah. It's funny. Remember the movies in the 80s and the 90s, and when you said, like, you know, just say no, like it's a choice.
Yeah,
like it's a choice. It is not a choice, because, you know, in those movies back in the days, they show the drug dealer on the streets as dirty and he's a pimp and here you go. But now the drug dealer, the man or the woman who got you addicted, is that man in that white coat. You can show that next slide there, Oz. And, you know, this is what it's all about. That man in the white coat. Yeah, you can take us off for a second. That's it. And, you know, you've already told your story before. And you kind of did a blanket story about what you went through. So I wanted to start the first show off, and you said it was a great idea. Let's start off the first show talking about your story. And I said, well, I got some questions. There's a little bit more things in depth I want to go into. You know what I'm saying? And these are the questions throughout the whole show I'm going to ask Shanda. I put them up there. And if you think of something else that you wanna ask out there, ladies and gentlemen, just put it in the chat. We'll look at it. We'll see if we can bring it to part of the show. But I also want to ask about the relationship with you and your doctor at the time. You know, were you close? Were you not close? Did it just seem, because I've had doctors before, right, that have been really close to me. My family physician, Dr. Polito, loved him, gave me a watermelon sucker every time I was done. But then there was times I went to doctors after that person, and it just felt like a financial transaction, right? It just felt like this is just here, there, whatnot. And I think sometimes people can like envision our doctor treating this whole addiction process when they subscribe these drugs to you, right? When they prescribe these drugs to you, not subscribe, prescribe these drugs to you, it's like a transaction, right? You know it. I did some work as a what do you call it? A caterer, and I dealt with pharmaceutical reps. And the way they approach these doctors, hey man, buy this drug Lexapro, you know what I'm saying? We'll make you part of the speech down in Key West this year. Come on down, you can be the keynote speaker and blah, 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 and we'll give you this and we'll give you that. And they take those deals. You know what I'm saying? They take that
they do.
and they run with it. So I want to talk a little bit about that. I also want to talk about the actual side effects and the effects of the painkillers when you're in it. You know what I'm saying? When you're taking them and whatnot. I think people really don't understand what's going on. Also, of course, the withdrawals we have to talk about.
I've got a lot of good stuff lined up for all of these questions.
Yes.
So, yeah.
So you can see the questions, guys. I'm not gonna really go into. There's also when you're pilled up, right? I said pilled up, and then it gave me the red squiggly line. Like, what does that word mean? But you know, I remember people I worked with in the restaurant business. They were on pills while they worked, and people didn't even know they were on pills while they were working.
Portion of America is
talking to people, you know, which says to you, you might not know who's addicted around you. Sometimes it could be everyday people, and you don't understand the suffering they're going through. You know, the cost. The first time you realized it was a problem, all these things. And finally, too, as well, something that you said to me once before, and I heard you say it on the show, too, when you did your accidental activist, is the thoughts of suicide. Just take me, end this, let me know, just take me out of this misery. And, you know, I've always had a thing about people who fought addiction and beat it. I always said they kind of walked and danced with the devil and came back to tell us the story, that they understand things and appreciate things that people who aren't addicts might not appreciate, or understand things that people who aren't addicts might not understand. Yeah. So that's the beginning of this whole thing. And I am just so excited to do this with you, Shanda. And I thank you for opening up, and let's hope that we can make some waves over here. So please begin with your story.
Okay. So, you know, it's one of those, where do I begin? So I grew up in a lower middle class home with very young parents. My mother was 16 when she had me, and my stepfather, who was the only father I really knew, was a couple years younger than her, but took on raising these kids. And they believed in the American dream, right? Like most people did in the 70s and 80s. You work hard, and so they bought property and they got a house. And drugs was not something that was in my purview as a child. My parents believed that you put them in sports, keep them busy type of mentality. My mom was a trauma room nurse, and my dad was an engineer for the government. He worked at the U.S. The PSNS shipyard. So, I mean, we had a decent, income for middle class. But what we did see a lot of was drinking, because drinking was so acceptable in that, you come home from work, you can have a beer, in the weekends, you drink Friday night, you drink Saturday night, grandma drink, grandpa drink, that was just what everybody did. So I think I already accepted that it was socially acceptable to take a substance to change the way I feel, just from the time I was growing up. Because I remember being a young teenager, and, you go to parties, you drink, you tried a little weed, you did that. So I dabbled and I experimented in high school, but I wasn't.
Where did you grow up? What high school, by the way? What area? I want people to understand.
I went to a very rural high school. It's called Belfair, which is just a little tiny speck on the map. I don't even remember how many kids, 300-400 in my graduating class. Mm-hmm. But if you look at the drugs, now drugs change constantly through time by what's being unleashed on us, by whatever entity, be it, deep state, whatever. But crystal meth was really popular in the late 80s, early 90s. I was in my early 20s that time, so I tried it, but I had a kid when I was 18. I got married, I had kids. And so I I really didn't feel like, I had to raise my kids. I couldn't do that type of shit. So really, I knew the pitfalls of addiction. I had watched my parents go through rehab, for alcohol and stuff. And I always knew, no, not you can't do that. If you go down that road, you won't come back. So I didn't. And I managed to get through my 20s, up until, mid years before this really became a problem. But when I was like 17, I blew out my knee. I was a cheerleader, and we were at a big, production, a big camp, and I had to have surgery. And so this is early 90s, right?
Mhm.
And my mom is a nurse. And so she's saying, here, take these, take these. And I didn't get addicted then, but I think that the pre pathway was set at that point because it helped make everything numb. It just made I like the way it made me feel. I didn't stress. I had energy. I could stay up. I could do whatever I needed to do. So then fast forward, till I'm about 29, 30. This is in
Yeah.
early 2000s. And I blow my knee out again. Well, I'm a working mom. I'm raising 3 kids on my own, making minimum wage. I can't take time off. It's not like I can go down to the welfare office and they're just going to hand me a check because my knee's injured and I need to be home for a month. It's sorry, doc, I got to get back to work as fast as I can, do whatever. And so I started out with my family doctor, who I had a good relationship with, who I really adored. He was a little bit younger and he was hip, and when I would go in there, he had such empathy for me. Like, oh, I'm so sorry, you're in so much pain.
What was the pain you were feeling, and what was the actual thing? You blew your knee out when you were 17, but like, I want people to understand like the pain that you were going through at work, which made you say, and by the way, I think when you say that, when your mom used to give you stuff and make you numb, it's also the whole process of it's just put it in your hand, put it in your mouth, swallow it. That kind of just easiness, that easiness of like, it just makes it so easy to do that again because it's simply boom, boom, boom. You know what I'm saying? So I think there's something to the whole way that it's easy just to do these drugs recreationally down the road too as well. You just grab something, pop it, and go with it. So
Well, these right in your mind, these aren't dangerous drugs because they're being
exactly.
prescribed by a doctor. This isn't a street drug, this isn't I'm not trying to be a drug addict, that type of thing. So yeah, it definitely makes it easier. But the pain I was going through is I had ripped my meniscus out years before. So my kneecap was loose and floating.
Oof.
And so I had a big what do they call it? Foreign body. Basically, it was a bunch of cartilage and stuff that formed from having multiple surgeries because they kept going in there and scoping it, trying to clean all the damage out. So what that did was that foreign body ripped all my meniscus, and my ligaments didn't hold my kneecap in place any longer. So we went with injections for a long time. So for like 2 years straight, I'd go in and I would get prescriptions. But at the same time, I was having cortisone injections in my knee once a week. Just, oh, I hated them. It was terrible. I lived in braces. So finally we decide, okay, it's not getting better. They've treated me for 2 or 3 years with opiates and everything they could. So now we're talking surgery. And so they're going to do a tib fib reduction. And what that means is they literally slice my whole leg open. They carve it out. They take the tendons, they cut them, they shorten the tendons to tighten around my kneecap, and then they re-screw the tendons back down with a screw that literally goes all the way through your leg. And you can't walk for 6 weeks, 2 months. You can't, I don't think I could run for probably 2 years after that surgery. And so I had that. Well, fast forward 6 months later, I'm barely walking. I'm back up on my feet. I break my ankle on my other leg. So now I'm literally in a cast on one leg and a brace on the other leg. And I'm trying to work. I'm a manager at I manage local stores and I got my 3 kids, they're active, I was a young mom, so my kids were teenagers, very, young for me. And so then, the doctor is just like, okay, well, now you have these problems. Now you're on what's called pain management. And pain management is where the pitfall is in this country, or it was. And I think it's going to be again. But they, okay, you're going to sign a contract that says we're going to put you on a heavy dose of opiates every day and you'll come in every month for your prescriptions, and we're going to drug test you and make sure you're not taking anything you're not supposed to be taking. And if you do anything wrong, we can take this away from you at any time, no questions asked. If we think that you're abusing, or if we think that you are addicted, they're handing you a script of one of the most addictive drugs on the planet, and
Yeah.
they're saying, if we think you are addicted, we're going to take this script away from you.
Okay, let's stop for a second because I have some questions right now. Let me get this straight. They made you sign a contract of sorts saying that we're going to control everything that goes in your body right now, pretty much. You can't be doing anything.
Right down to smoking. If your doctor wanted you to quit smoking, he could take your opiates away from you if you don't quit smoking.
And the reason why they're making you sign this contract is because they're giving you a very serious addictive substance right now, correct? And this is like the first time you're going to go on it. We're going to manage your pain with a pill, with a drug, and we want you to sign not experiencing it, not knowing a lot about it. You know what I'm saying? I mean, you had a little bit of sense of what's going on because of your family was nurses and shit. But I just want to reiterate, and I can't believe it. What was your thought process when they asked you to sign this? Did you think like, well, I got to go do some research on this, or was it just, well, I'll do anything to get rid of this pain right now?
Well, okay. So at that point, I was well addicted by the time I went into pain management, because at that point
gotcha.
I had been getting, but here's the thing, my doctors, pain management rolled out slow. So the DEA was getting their ears a little perked that people were overdosing. So let's see if we can put a little control on this. And that's where pain management came from. My doctor was so kind that he didn't push me over to the pain management doctor until the very last straw, where the DEA said, no, all patients have to go to a pain management specialist. So it used to be your doctor could manage your pain, and some doctors still do, but most clinics now shove everybody into one pain management specialist who's only had 18 months of training, and most of them are physician's assistants. Most of them aren't even MDs. So anyway.
Okay. So let's backtrack a little bit. So before pain management, you were already taking pills, you said?
Well, yeah, because the doctor had been prescribing them for about 3 years before.
Which ones?
Management. I started out with oxycodones, which is a Percocet.
So he went right to the big stuff.
No, we went there slowly, and that's the way you do it on opiates, because your tolerance on opiates is so, you grow it so fast, and they know it. And so you step up, step up, step up. So I started out taking 30 milligrams of Percocet, and by the time I was done, I was taking 110 milligrams of methadone and 90 milligrams of Percocet a day, not to mention Klonopin, Valium, benzoids, somas.
So you just started working your way gradually up and stuff. Now, you said before, I remember watching The Accidental Activist, the very first time he says, let's give you something to ease the pain. You had a little knowledge of what's going on. Your mom was a nurse, so you kind of understood that. And you just got to reiterate again and say what you asked the doctor the first time he said, let's do this, and then his reaction.
Well, didn't you as a kid know that taking pain pills was bad? I mean, come on. I think we all know that deep down. Like, we've always been taught that, like, these are addictive. We watch Little House on the Prairie when Albert got addicted, you know? And so, I asked my doctor when he was handing me these prescriptions, you know, after a couple of times, well, won't I get addicted to these if I keep taking them? And he goes, oh, no. You don't have to worry about that, because when the time comes, we'll just step you down gradually. We'll step you off. It's called the step down system. And so I was like, okay, he's the doctor. I guess, you know, I'm not thinking rehabs and your life's coming to an end, you know. I'm thinking, okay, you know, I'll just.
So this is the doctor going, take these, you'll feel better. And you're even going, but Andrew, you know, he got Little House on the Prairie over here. This is, you know, this is bad. And it's just, I mean, I don't understand, like, you know, how they can get away. And I understand that some doctors, and we'll get into that, might honestly be sympathetic, might honestly care, but everybody understands how these drugs can be so addicting, so painful, so powerful, and so dangerous that they can just easily say, well, we'll step you down.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that. Do you ever go back to that first time when he said that and think about everything that you've gone through, the suffering, and think about
that time right there that he said that?
I do think about that, but I quickly got past it because of how rapidly being addicted changed my life. It became harder and harder to function on a daily basis. I had to plan out what I was going to do if versus when do I get my prescription? Like, oh no, I can't, I can't go shopping. I can't go on a trip unless I get my script 2 days before that because I won't be functioning, and this is a problem with a lot of addicts. And to be truthful, is when you first get them, oh, well, whenever I hurt, I'm just going to take one. And then as the month goes on and you're getting lower and lower, you always are out early. Always. I don't know an opiate addict who doesn't run out of early. That's just the way it is. And doctors know that. They freaking know that. And so, yeah, no,
Yeah.
I get
It's
over it
just
really quick is the way I look at it.
that's just tough, because I think of when you told me that story, I immediately said that bastard. Like I really did. I said that bastard. How could he do that? How can they but this is done by a lot of doctors. And then you also explained to me like how a lot of doctors are really sympathetic to people's pain as well. So it seems like a quagmire of a situation, you know what I'm saying? This is why I've been screaming, why don't you just legalize weed all the time? But I don't think weed would numb the pain of some of the things that really, when people, especially athletes like yourself, like you're blowing out your knee. I was once prescribed Percocets when I rolled my ankle playing softball. Like I rolled it on third base and it looked like a grapefruit was in my ankle. And I remember taking the Percocets but it was just terrible on my stomach.
Yeah.
But I can tell you this much, when you take some of those suckers and you've never had that shit in your body, everything is numb.
Yeah. Yeah. It
It's numb.
absolutely is. It is. So, Aj, you want to go to the next slide? Get
Yeah.
moving through this story a little bit quicker. How's the chat doing? You guys hanging in there? Okay, so my addiction. My addiction kind of went hand in hand with my life at that point. When you're that addicted, I was working in a bar, I was bartending at one point, and I'm not even kidding. Everybody was coming in with scripts. And that was the thing about my small town is we have one doctor's office, one clinic, and everybody goes to that clinic and everybody was getting scripts. And I mean, the pills that were being passed through that bar. And, I really didn't get carried away at that point. But in the next few years, the people that come into my life, and I now look back on it and I know it was the drugs that brought those people into my life. They exacerbated it, by the boyfriends I had and the friends I was hanging out with, bad company, right? And so then you get into this subculture that I never knew was there. And I look back on it now and I'm like, I can't believe I lived in that subculture, in that subculture for probably 5 or 6 years of every day. I will get to the point where I lost my scripts and there's many reasons why I lost my scripts, not anything that I did personally, but
Yeah.
I should have lost them anyways. But then once I hit that point is when I start buying them off of anybody and everybody. And that's when the spiral comes.
Yeah.
So
You're talking about subculture. You're talking about the whole, because you're going to get into this. We're going to get into this here as far as like, when you don't have the finances to go through your prescriptions and whatnot, or you're thrown off them for whatever reason, and the addiction is so bad, the withdrawals are so bad that you got to hit the streets out there to get what you need. And from what I'm hearing that from my friend that's in North Georgia right now, like the stories of like what's on the streets now about, the federal, the synthetic heroin.
fentanyl.
We'll get there. I don't want to jump the gun, but yeah, people dying off this fentanyl in North Georgia, and it's just so scary. But yeah, when you say the word culture, can you elaborate a little bit on that, or do you want to wait and hold off and talk about that when the time is right? Because I don't think people realize what you have to do once you're going through a situation when your doctor is actually writing you a prescription to now I got to go find it for myself to feed my addiction, to get rid of this pain and this withdrawals.
Right. Okay. So I want to talk about insurance and the racketeer that is Big Pharma.
Yes.
So now it's 2011, and I have now been in pain management, non-opiates since the early 2000s, probably 2001 or two. And I changed jobs a couple of times in that time, and Medicare for all, whatever. I was working for the state, so I had really good Blue Cross Blue Shield. And so I had a copay of like $20 when all of this first started. And then as I got sicker and got more addicted, I, lost that job. And then I would end up with state coverage, blanketed here and there, and I'd have copays. And at one point, one of those copays kicked $1,000 bill back to my doctor's office. And so with no warning or no notice, I go in, and it was August of 2011. And at the reception desk, the receptionist tells me, "Oh, well, this will be your last visit." And I was like, "What? Why? Now what? No, I have to be here every month or I'm going to die. I can't live without coming into this place," is where I was at. I don't get out of bed unless I get the meds that you guys have given me for 8 years. And so I go back, I talk to the pain management doctor, and she's crying. She's crying. She's like, "I don't know what to tell you. I'm so sorry." She's like, "I hear I can write you a couple of extra clonidines, which is a withdrawal med. Here's your scripts for the month." She's like, "I've been talking to management, unless you pay the $1,000, you just can't come back." Right. And in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, okay, this is God's way of cleaning me up. This is the best thing, just get the hell out of here and not look back. And so within a month now, I'm having to procure my own drugs. And I can't say that I actually started doing it at that time, because when you're an opiate addict, you have this subculture of friends, of people that you acquire and people that you become knowledgeable that they have pills too. So if I'm working in a grocery store and the cashier next to me, "Oh, my back, oh yeah, I take Percocet. Oh yeah, me too. Oh, you need a couple? Here's a couple. Oh, you need Vicodin? Here, I got a Vicodin." And you build these relationships all around you with friends and with family members. I'm not going to say a lot of names, but I have a lot of close family that, "Hey, can you help me out? I don't have anything till next Thursday. And when I get mine, I'll pay you back double,
Yeah. It's like Fight Club, right? Like, you don't mention Fight Club to other people, but we know who's in Fight Club right now. You need a pill, I'll get you. You get me back. I know. I've experienced that. I've had friends like that. They, my stupid ass, there was a guy who owed me money, and I took his Oxycontins. He got thrown out of the place, and he left these Oxycontins, and I sold them to one of my friends who was a waiter at my restaurant. And all of a sudden, this other waitress comes over, and I was like, "Holy shit, I didn't know that
I didn't know
do
you
this
did
stuff."
that.
It's like their own secret society club and stuff.
It is.
It's just crazy because addicts identify each other. It's like potheads. Like, "Oh, you got the good shit. Oh, I got some OG Kush." It's kind of like that. But I think the risk of the opioid addiction is so much more dangerous than anything that THC can do to you. But also, you mentioned the fact that, and this is really sad too, that here you are, the doctors are getting you addicted, right? Like, now you're addicted. And you didn't do anything wrong. You didn't get arrested. You didn't get in trouble. Just for financial reasons, they can pull the rug right out from underneath you. Am I right when I say that? And how disgusting is this?
Yeah, it's so disgusting. So within 35 days of losing my script, because I didn't know any other way to deal with my detox and the withdrawals. And we're going to get into withdrawals because that's what I really want to make people understand. But I didn't know what else to do. I was so desperate that I just started drinking. And I was in bad relationships. I was coming out of a divorce. I mean, my life was just unraveling before my eyes. My kids were farmed out. There's no way I could hold a freaking job down, no way in hell. Most days I couldn't open my eyes, get out of bed, or stop shaking. I was so sick. So, I ended up in jail. Just out of control, belligerent. I don't, third degree malicious mischief, me just being, out of control basically. And I was in that jail cell, and I was DTing. I was withdrawing. I was hungover from the alcohol. I was so, I wanted to die. I absolutely wanted to die. And when I got out, I wasn't, I'm a good girl. I don't have a record really, other than just being, loud and mouthy. I didn't know what to do. And a friend of mine was like, "Well, I got family in West Virginia, so let's head over there and see them." So I'm in Washington State, and we go to West Virginia. Like, I've only been, I lost my script maybe 5 weeks before I went to West Virginia. So I wasn't in West Virginia 2 hours, and I had already had pills in my hand. And really, being in West Virginia was a huge eye opener to me about culturally how this drug had been unleashed on populations around the country and the devastation that it was creating. I mean, I've lived in poor situations. I'm a single mom, but I have never seen just the squalor and just terrible conditions that people are living in some of the, the hollers in West Virginia. And yeah, and how readily drugs were available there, that was a real shocker to me. So, but I came home and I continued on with my addiction for many years, and just buying them from wherever I could get them. Maybe I get a doctor to give me 2 or 3 scripts of Vicodin, and then he'd say, "Oh no, I can't do that anymore." They really cracked down. The DEA cracked down in 2012 to now, and so it made it much harder to get scripts,
Yeah.
and so I was at a point where I just knew that if I didn't stop or figure out a way to stop, I was moving to heroin and I was going to die because I couldn't afford pills. I couldn't keep affording, when you can pay $100 for one pill, there was no way. I needed 20 pills a day to stay well. There was no way I could keep doing that. And heroin was the only next step. And that's a problem. It is the next step for a lot of people. A lot of people, I think we have the stat in the deck, start out on prescription opiates and they end up on heroin and now fentanyl. And I knew if I did that, I was dead. That was going to be the end of it. And I heard a report about kratom, this all natural tea that grows in Southeast Asia. And I started researching it, and I tried it, and I didn't really like it at first. It didn't give me a high. I wanted to be high. And and so, but then as my life spiraled more and more out of control, I was like, you know what, you're better on the kratom. You're not sick. You can function. You can be a normal functioning person of society, and you can get your life under control. And then that's what I did, and that's what kratom saved my life.
I think that's, I know somebody who takes kratom, and that person says kratom saves his life too. And we'll get more into that. Let's I think it's a great way to open up the show. It's almost 50 minutes or 40 minutes, and that's the first part, but it's okay because we have to take the time to really understand this and talk about these things. And there's a lot of things I think a lot of people are going to realize from watching this today. By the way, Hunter Carranza, who's on our Rokfin Premium on the Convo Couch, and if you haven't signed up or have not followed the Roar Media Rokfin, go do it right now. These are our fams up here. We love them. And this is going to be a great series. Next week, we're going to actually talk about the opioid trade, the opioid, how it started. So there's going to be a lot of stuff. We're going to go into this. Shanda, she describes herself. She goes, "I'm not a doctor. I'm like a street. What do you say? A street pharmacist of sorts? What did you call yourself?" Or
yeah, I'm not a doctor. I'm just a street pharmacist. I'm Dr.
But you know more than a lot of doctors because the doctors don't understand the society. They don't understand what it's like to be on that. I'm sure some doctors and nurses have got addicted. I heard Nurse Jackie was about nurses taking that stuff. And like you guys, I have my plate over here, ladies and gentlemen. It has my benzos, my opioids, my stimulants, my antidepressants, my mats, my sleep aids. We're getting an education here. And this is something we have to understand too as well. Because we have to find a way out of this. You know what I'm saying? And that's the whole thing. What's the problem? Identify the problem. What's the solution? Right? And you talk about kratom. So we'll get into that. I think we should start rolling into this, and I'll have some more questions, I'm sure, as we go along for Shanda and anybody out there who has any questions. Hunter Carranza, by the way, said, much love, you guys. I can relate. My past had abuse, addiction, child welfare, all of it. I appreciate it. And we appreciate you, Hunter, for sharing that with us and stuff. So do you want to roll this clip here, Miss Shanda?
Yeah, so let's get into the origins of some of these opiates. Where do opiates come from? Why are they here? So this is a short clip on where it came from. Okay. For some reason it stopped early.
Drugs that have been used for millennia. They've been used for the treatment of pain. They've been used for spiritual purposes and for recreational purposes because opioids can provide
I don't think that's
effective
the right
pain
kind, Oz.
relief. They can also produce a euphoria. Opioids are drugs that come from opium.
Yeah, that's not the
And
right
it was
cut.
about 200 years ago that a German chemist figured
155
out
to
how to
316.
isolate one of the more
I
potent
can't hear it if you put it up, too.
molecules in the
Right
late
there.
1800s. The opioid addiction epidemic had grown severe. Overdose deaths involving morphine had risen to very high levels, and there was an awareness among health officials across the United States about the risks and dangers of products containing morphine. It was in the midst of that morphine epidemic that the Bayer Corporation introduced a new opioid called heroin. And when the Bayer Corporation introduced heroin, it actually promoted heroin as a safer alternative to morphine. There was lots of concern about overdose risk with morphine. And so heroin was promoted as having a lower
Oz, could you
risk
put the volume up
of
for me?
overdose death. And the Bayer Corporation pointed to studies that they had done in
The
mice
cut's
to
right there
try and
anyways.
show
Okay.
that there was
So
less risk
basically,
of overdose death
you want to
from
cut it? There we
decreased.
go. So basically, if you understand where morphine comes from, right? It comes from the poppy,
Mhm.
and you could buy opium in a syrup back in the 1800s. It was prescribed by your doctor, or you could go get it in a doctor's or in a drugstore. And Bayer decided that there's a lot of people dying from morphine, so they're going to create a safer alternative, and this is where we got heroin from.
Mhm.
And so this is the base of a lot of these medications that we're talking about.
Mhm. Uh, do you think the fact that haven't left Afghanistan to this
Yes.
day has anything to do with the fact that there's an opioid trade there? That's
But
where the poppies come from?
honestly, we get most of our pharmaceutical grade opium comes from Pakistan, of all places. And we're really going to dive into those aspects of it in the next few weeks. We're going to look at the opium wars. We're going to look at,
Okay.
at why
looking-
and how this is a global problem.
I'm looking forward to those shows and stuff. So, but yeah, all right. So that's where the majority of these drugs come from, and I think it's important to understand that. So,
For now,
it-
I want to talk about the withdrawal and what you go through when you're on an opiate. I think people don't have passion for other people because they don't understand. You know,
yeah,
if you've never been there, you don't understand.
yeah. I think people. Are we going to play this clip first, or do you want to say something before we play the clip?
No, we can go ahead and play the clip.
Yeah, we'll talk after this clip, because this is the really part that really I think a lot of people do have to understand. I've never experienced this before, where I've been addicted to opioids. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know what that withdrawal is like. And I remember what you said it was like. It blew my mind. And I'm like, we have to tell this story, because this isn't about personal choice. A lot of people think it's just personal choice out there. Just say no. It's not.
America has had a heroin problem for decades, but around 2010, something changed, shifting it from a national problem to an epidemic. Opiates have always been used for pain relief, and fair enough. No one wants to go through an operation without morphine. But because they're potentially addictive, traditionally these drugs were tightly controlled. Doctors would keep a close eye to make sure their patients weren't becoming dependent. But then, in the 1990s, researchers at a pharmaceutical company spotted an opportunity. They began pushing the idea that opioid pain medication was actually much less addictive than previously thought. And why were these companies so desperate to convince doctors that they could prescribe far more powerful opioid medications? Because there were billions and billions of dollars to be made. Pharmaceutical companies began sending sales reps across the US and Canada, aggressively marketing much stronger opioid pain medication to doctors. The market leaders in this, though by no means the only ones at it, were Purdue Pharma, pushing their shiny new pill, OxyContin.
So I used to call on a doctor in this corner suite right here. And so I started calling on him on a frequent basis and talking to him about OxyContin. He started writing OxyContin.
They were wildly successful. Between 1997 and 2002, prescriptions for OxyContin increased from 670,000 to 6.2 million.
Playing football, I had a awesome year. And the game before the playoffs, I tore my knee. I just had a fucking doctor that wanted to give me all these pills. I kept going back to the dude and he was giving me, you know, whatever. He said these 5s aren't working right. I need something stronger. So he gives me 7.5s and some Dilaudid.
By the time opioid prescribing peaked in 2012, 255 million prescriptions were written. In over 10% of US counties, enough opioid prescriptions were written for every single citizen to have one. But there was a problem. If you hand out hundreds of millions of opioid pills, a lot of people are going to get addicted. Since its very beginning, the drug war has been targeted at ethnic minorities and the poor. But now, with opioid prescribing, millions of people were getting addicted in white suburban neighborhoods.
That pretty much covers everything that we've talked about, but yeah, that's what drug reps did, and that's what big pharmaceutical has done. They pushed it, you know, they wanted this out there, but now they're going to benefit twice on it, and that's because of the MAT program, which is the medically assisted treatment, and we'll get into that in a few minutes. I'm trying to speed us along the story a little bit.
Yeah, go ahead. I mean, I think everything was said there. I just can't understand when they said this will be less addictive. I mean, who said it would be less addictive? Was this once again big pharma?
Pseudoscience and their bullshit fucking researching. Yeah. You know, we see it constantly. And so, you know, science has been bought out. We know science has been bought out just as much as any other, you know, institution, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so you want to play this one?
The brain, and it works very, very quickly. It sits in the receptors in the brain that stimulate euphoria, and that's why people use it.
And what we know now is that when you give people opioids like morphine or OxyContin, the brain changes. It changes very quickly to downregulate the pain fibers because you have all this opioid sloshing around. And you can actually get something called hyperalgesia where you feel more pain because of the opioids, and then you have to go up on the opioid dose, which leads to, you know, more side effects and tolerance and withdrawal if you stop, and ultimately addiction.
I just had a kidney stone, and I was given a narcotic. To be honest, it relieved the pain. But, you know, to take it for a few days and then not take it, I think I actually experienced a little bit of withdrawal.
Opiate withdrawal, and the effects of opiate withdrawal on the body are very, very tough. So it's been described to me as, imagine the worst flu you've ever had and multiply that by 10.
1 in 5 people will become a long-term user who are prescribed an opiate. And, you know, they show you the neural pathways, and that's the biggest thing. You can't just say no. When your neural pathways have been completely rewritten, you have no way to achieve what I call homeostasis. Homeostasis is, I feel good, I feel normal, my body temperature is normal, my stomach function is normal, you know, I feel normal. And you can never get back to that feeling after you've rewrote those pathways in your brain with opiates, with long-term abuse.
Let's talk about the addiction and the withdrawal process real quick, right? Okay, so these are the symptoms from between 24 to 72 hours after the last opioid dose. And why don't you go through some of these right here right now? But I mean, he even said in that video right there, it's like, take any pain you have and multiply it by 10. You said something similar to that. And that's, I think, the thing that really caught me to think that, like, okay, withdrawal, like, you know, I need coffee, I have a headache, let me drink some water. It's not like that. Why don't you give a little talk about these symptoms and kind of plug in a little actual life experiences to really kind of reiterate this list over here?
Oh man. So, I mean, it starts out with diarrhea. And I don't know if that's the very first symptom I feel, but diarrhea is definitely a huge problem when you're coming off of opiates because opiates binds you up. So, if you're a long-term opiate user, normally you're on a constipation med along with it to keep you normal. And that's because it pulls water out of your bowel, so you get backed up. So then when you don't have the opiate, the floodgate just opens and everything in your stomach liquefies. I mean, you'll just shit yourself. And I know lots of people who have done that. I'm not personally, but yeah, and abdominal cramping. I mean, your stomach, because opioids works on the bowel for some reason, Imodium is it works on the same thing. So a lot of people take a lot of Imodium. You'll see horror stories about people taking 500 Imodium when they're going through withdrawals. Don't ever do that. Oh my gosh. But goosebumps on your skin. This is one that gets me. I will never be able to regulate my body temperature again. And if you notice, I'm normally in tank tops. And that's because I had the hardest time regulating my body temperature. Normally, when I would stop using, I would get violently cold and then you go into cold sweats. So, you're trying to fall asleep. You can't sleep because you got a lack of opiate. But now, when you do fall asleep within 10 or 20 minutes, you wake up in a pool of sweat, even though you're just shivering, freezing, nausea and vomiting. Oh, yeah. I mean, I remember times just laying on the floor in the bathroom. Blurred vision, rapid heartbeat, high blood pressure. Absolutely. I mean, you can't calm your heart down. You feel like you can't catch your breath. Muscle aches. Now, when you take an opiate, like he said, it intensifies the pain because what you're doing is you're fucking up your nerves, right? And so your neural pathways run up through the back of your back. Every opiate addict I know has shoulder problems because it goes through your nervous system in your shoulder. And so you're hurting, you're hunched over, you're grabbing your stomach, you're trying to shake or rock yourself to feel better. Tears and runny nose, because it has the drying effect on your body, your tears just pour down your face, your nose runs, you're constantly wiping your face, excess sweating, inability to sleep. I would be up for weeks. I mean, without an opiate, there was no sleep. I would pray to God, just give me 20 minutes where I don't feel my body and I don't feel the pain, anything just to get a little bit of peace. Yawning. I don't know why the yawning, but it's true. You yawn a lot and total fatigue. I had a girlfriend who came off of a very high dose of methadone that her doctor had given her after a car accident. And she said to me, girl, I couldn't even put my shoes on. It would take me a half hour to get one shoe on. It was so exhausting. I would have to sit back down on the bed and then try to get the other one on, and she's trying to get to court, right? Car accident, need to deal with the courts, and she can't even get herself out the door to take care of her life. And so now you can't do anything when you're like this. And people think, 24, 72 hours. Okay. So it's like a hangover. You just let it wear off. But that's not the case with opiates. We have a saying in the opiate community, take however long you were on opiates, and that's however long it was going to take for you to feel normal again. So if you were on for 10 years, you're looking at 10 years of recovery, right?
Yeah.
And so, opiates has taken a lot of our stars, Prince, Tom Petty, just to name a few, and many have been outspoken. I saw this interview with Eminem, and he says, I didn't sleep for 3 weeks. And that's just because of the terrible withdrawals he was going through.
I was in a pretty dark place, for the last few years. A typical day, I mean, like as far as like work or anything like that, like I was always working. At the time in 2005 when I ended up in rehab, I had to while I was in there, I really had to reassess, go back and just evaluate and just reassess things and slow down. When I came out of rehab, I was clean for I think 3 weeks total. I only stayed in rehab for 2 weeks because when I went to rehab, it felt like everyone else was ready for me to go, but I wasn't ready myself. So I stayed for 2 weeks. I detoxed. I tried to work the program, and but everything they were saying, I kind of in the back of my mind, I knew And once I get out of here, I'm going right back to what I was doing. You know what I mean? I kind of, there was like a little devil up in there telling me that that's what was going to happen. And when I came home, I was like 2 weeks in rehab and a week home, I think maybe a week home, I started taking Vicodin again and still trying to like, I think at that point in time, I still felt like I was kind of like, I can juggle this. I can do this. I can take it, you know, today and maybe tomorrow I won't. When I was doing the 8 Mile movie, and that's when I kind of first got introduced to Ambien. And the schedule that we were on, we were working like 16-hour days. And we'd have this little like 6-hour window to go home and go to sleep. And it was an hour drive from the set and an hour drive back. So what's that mean? I have 4 hours to get some sleep. So I got introduced to Ambien on the set of 8 Mile, and I got into the habit of taking it every single night. By the time the movie was wrapped, went on tour. Now I need it every night after a show. You know what I mean? And then it got to where I became dependent on the sleep medications. And then there was like it's a real blurry line, like if I actually had a problem with alcohol or I didn't. And I think that if I never had drugs, if I never had pills to fall back on, I would have had a full-blown, I'd have been a full-blown alcoholic.
Did you stop drinking?
I did. I didn't like the way that I'd feel the next day. And, I liked the high of the pills more than I liked the drunk. And, I had been drinking for many years. And so, yeah, I look back on that and was like, well, I just traded one addiction for another. But I hear a lot of people say that. I quit drinking and started taking pills.
Yeah, I know. I've heard a lot of people say that too as well. Also because the fact that I think alcohol mixed with the pills in the system can be really deadly. I
And
guess.
let me tell you, I took it to the fucking extreme many, many times. I shouldn't be sitting here. I should not, by the grace of God. I am an extreme junkie. I think everybody who knows me knows that. I have to go to the max on everything. And I always outdrank everybody, outsmoked everybody, outtook everything. And because I was a functioning addict, I had kids, I had jobs. I justified it, I just got to take more because I got to get through the day.
Rethink addiction. It's not about willpower. So you're saying Nancy Reagan with the just say no. And I know a lot of people who thought this too as well when they didn't understand opioid addiction or they didn't understand addiction whatsoever. They think it's just a choice. You know what I'm saying? And that's when you told me like the withdrawals were like 10 times worse than any other pain you felt unless you got one of those opioids back into your system. So can you give a little insight to this rethink addiction you have up here?
Rethink addiction, we just think that, oh, well, we can spin dry somebody for 7 days and then kick them out on the streets. But, a trauma is the gateway drug, if you ask me. Trauma as children, trauma in your teen years, trauma as an adult. My father committed suicide when I was 22. And the trauma of that, I think, really stemmed most of my addiction because it coincided right around the same time, and he had his problems with pills, that I didn't know about as a teenager, but now I know now as an adult,
Yeah.
This has
It
been a
got to my
problem.
father late in his life. My
Yeah.
dad he was a wino. He liked to drink wine, smoke
Yep,
cigarettes,
my dad
smoke a
too.
little weed. But
Yep.
at the end of his life, and that was the thing too. He just wanted pain pills to make him feel better. And I remember the whole thing is that he would get so constipated and stuff when he was on the
Oh,
pill,
yeah.
screaming and crying. But then he always wanted another pill to make the pain go away because he couldn't deal with the pain. And I remember that. And I said, there's no way this is not about willpower over here. This man is addicted. And I've met people like this. It's addicted. And I think we have to break that stigma out there that it's personal choice, especially when we've discovered that in a lot of situations, just what we saw from that Vice little clip, is that your doctor prescribed these to you. He gave these to you. And when your doctor gives you something in society, right, you're supposed to be like, okay, that means it's all right. It's not like I'm scoring Aaron off the
Right.
street. That's
Right.
where you'll end up.
And I use that excuse, my teenage daughter is calling me out, oh, you're just a pillhead. And I remember that just was like a stab in the heart. Like, no, my doctor gives these to me. What are you talking about? I'm just taking medication that my doctor's telling me to take,
Yeah.
So when people are trying to get you help or call you out for what's really going on, you're justifying it because, no, my doctor gives these to me.
Let's look at this next chart over here because this is Man, you know, people talk about, I think that's the same number of people who die every year who die from a lack of health coverage, right? For insurance. They don't have Medicare. They don't have, they can't go to the doctor. And that's the same amount of number of people on the opposite side who are dying from overdoses. It's like, holy shit. If you put that together, that's 150,000 people every year.
Yeah.
But tell us a little bit more about this chart right here.
Well, I've seen a lot of death in my community from overdoses. I've had a couple of family members that have been brought back by Narcan. Narcan just hit the streets. So you see where the chart drops down in 2018?
Yeah.
That's because of the introduction of Narcan across the country. Narcan is an opiate blocker that is administered via a needle, just in the thigh or whatever, and it literally reverses the effects of overdose, and it brings people back from death. And there's a lot of controversy, especially in states that really need it because they don't want to use it. The EMTs are finally starting to carry it. Fire departments are finally starting to carry it. I always have a bottle with me, or not with me, but in my medical bag, because I do have family members. I was like, oh, why do I carry this around? I'm like, well, I never know when I might need it, So yeah, I have a bottle of it stashed.
That makes me think about two things. If number one, it makes me think, okay, first of all, when I think about the whole thing, now we have this drug that will bring you back from life. Then we have all these opioids we give him, these synthetic, drugs we give you and stuff like that. It makes me think of the Syrian conflict, the way the military-industrial complex was funding the CIA, the Department of Homeland Security, the war machine. They were funding every single side. They didn't care who won the war or lost the war. They just cared that there was a war. And that's the same thing they care about right here, is that they just care that there's an addiction. So therefore they can fund either the treatment or the actual addiction itself now. Like now, instead of going out and getting drugs on the streets, your doctor gives it to you, so the state becomes your daddy. And also the fact that what's the name of this drug that you're talking about that brings you back to life?
Okay, so that's Narcan, but there's a whole class of drugs that just got introduced like in 2016 and on. That are medically assisted treatments. Now they realize that people are not going to just go get clean; they're permanently addicted. So let's come up with a money-making way to just fuel that, because they're just going to go get heroin or whatever. So now we have Suboxone, and you'll hear Subutex or Suboxone a lot when you talk to addicts nowadays. And one script of Suboxone for a month is over $700. So I know people that come out of 12-step programs, they need the Suboxone because they're integrating these MAT drugs in with 12-step programs now all over the country. And so people will go detox and then they'll get on one of these medically assisted drugs. Now, it's just like an insulin patient. They are expected to take it forever, for the rest of their lives, until they decide they're going to quit or die, right?
Yeah, you said that some states are not going to carry this stuff because they want to put a deterrent out there. It's almost like what Trump says at the border. Well, don't come here. You know what I'm saying? They're grabbing your children as a deterrent for you coming here. So by the time you get your child, you go right back, and now you're scared to come here. Same thing with this drug. Don't do heroin because they don't have this particular type of drug to help you. Yeah. So, it just seems so disgusting because it's like the mindset behind making it illegal to me. It's like, well, these people shouldn't be doing this shit, and I'm not going to give them incentives to save their lives when they do it.
There's sheriffs all over the country that have that mentality who won't allow Narcan to be carried in their patrols.
Do you guys think it's kind of reminiscent of shoot 'em in the leg?
A little.
A little. We have a super Ray, a very thoughtful one. I'd like to jump in here. This is from Bubblegum Douche. Shanda, you are badass beyond my ability to express in words. Love to pasta too. Thank you so much for sharing this. Triple exclamation point. By the way, happy belated birthday.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I did also want to say, I wanted to tell everybody over on the Convo Couch's stream, we're having an anti-lag problem. I apologize. Johnny and I don't know why. However, we are going to load the file there. We're going to upload it after the show, so there won't be any lagging when you go back to see it.
Perfect. Thank you so much for jumping in there, and thank you for the Super Ray contribution. There's 24 people over on the Raw Rokfin. Get signed up if you haven't signed up over there. Open up 2 windows. Watch one on ours if you can. Ours is the premium for the people who've been supporting us for a while, and you can watch it for free at Roar Media. We want to get more people over there. We got to get these people some love. They deserve it. We love doing this stuff. It's just great to work with Roar Media every chance we get. Now, what's this we got behind us here? This is the opioid epidemic by the number.
Some stats. So, we already talked about the 70,000 plus, probably close to 80,000.
Yeah, it keeps climbing.
6 million have an opiate disorder in the past year. So 1.6 million. I once heard a statistic that, okay, so this says 10 million misuse opiates in the past year. We think on average that there's 7 to 10 million Americans that are addicted to opiates, and be it Percocet, heroin, fentanyl, they're all in the opiate class. Let's see, 2 million are on methamphetamines. Yeah, that's another problem, but that one seems to be not as, prevalent right now. People use heroin. 50,000 people will use heroin for the first time. For the first time.
That's scary. That's going to be, this is going to be the numbers that we're seeing right here. If we don't do something about it, if we don't even at least recognize it, they're going to double. They're going to triple. And,
they are. So I have some new stats that I was looking at yesterday or the day before. Since COVID lockdown went into effect, opiate deaths are on the rise by major amount of percentage. I mean, we had like 12,000 deaths the year before, and we're already at 15, and we're only halfway through the year. So they're predicting it's going to be a massive jump after this year's over.
I can imagine with the coronavirus, everybody was on lockdown, couldn't get out there, get some fresh air, couldn't run around. You have no sense of being sometimes. You're just trapped.
Doom, right?
The opioid,
the
heroin deaths, forget about it, right?
So this is the vicious cycle of opioid use, triggered as sense of calm and pleasure in your brain. Just reading that makes me feel what it was like to be on pills. Withdrawals, uncomfortable or painful symptoms after not using, and then craving, strong, overwhelming desire for opiates, where you're ready to do a deal with the devil in order to feel better.
I saw people in the society, kind of all just wanting drugs and coming to me for money and stuff.
Right.
And you feel bad. What do you do? When somebody's begging you, just they're in pain and they can't do this.
I help them, because I don't know how many times I would pray to God. I'm dying here. If I don't get a pill, I need money. I need something. I need anything, just send me even somebody to stop by and smoke a bowl with me, because marijuana really did limp me through a lot of the hard times. But I swear to God, or maybe it was something else, but somebody would show up and they'd have a script, or, they'd have money, or it just seemed like there was always somebody there to lift me. And so now if somebody comes to me and they're in that kind of pain, I'm not going to deny them, because I understand that want and that craving of, I will do anything. Every opiate addict has grandeurs of robbing a pharmacy. I promise you.
Yeah,
everyone,
drugstore cowboy.
Yeah, exactly.
So the CDC, we always love to hear what's coming out of the CDC there, Shanda. Didn't you say that you're like, I ain't taking this vaccine? Fuck this shit. Big Pharma's been trying to kill me for 40 some odd years. They ain't gonna get me now.
Yeah, that's it too. I question everything, especially when not just opiates, but I understand, the full gamut of pharmaceuticals that they unleashed on the population. Doctors really don't even know what these drugs do. It's the pharmacists that are supposed to know how they function in the brain and the body. And doctors just like, oh, well, the drug rep said this treats this, this, and this, they're not that in depth. I mean, what do they do? Continued education a couple times a year on whatever topic they want. Unless they are living this, I don't think a lot of doctors understand what these drugs do. But the CDC is saying that there's a steep increase in fatal drug overdoses in Washington State since COVID started. So it's a 28% increase in deaths in Washington State just from 2019 to 2020. Let's see. Of course, an insurance company compiled the study. What wizard? The CDC stats used in the analysis show Washington had 1,223 deaths in 2019 and 1,563. So nationwide, 18,000 people died of overdoses in 2020. Then in 2019, Louisiana, Kentucky, West Virginia have the highest increases of overdose related deaths. Combined opiate account for nearly less 70% of opiate overdose deaths. And I've lived in Louisiana and I've lived in West Virginia, and I understand why that is. These are some of the poorest, most suppressed places in our nation. There's no jobs.
It seems to happen in areas where there's a lot of poverty too. Florida has pain clinics instead of marijuana dispensaries. I'm surprised Florida didn't make that list.
Right?
Yeah.
Kind of
They have
shocking.
these pain clinics. You can just go and just get a bunch of pills and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Here's what you said before, right? The pharmaceutical industry does not want to create cures. They create customers. They create addicts.
Yep.
And the next thing you know, you're there. And that's the scary thing about this whole situation. We could talk about it left and right, up and down, but the fact is that this is created, and a lot of times it's created by your doctor. Your doctor becomes your drug dealer. And in society, we have a whole society talking about Medicare for all. We want to fight Medicare for all. But, there's a lot of nuances to what's going on inside when it comes to the lack of therapy, when it comes to the easiness of your doctor to put that pill jar out and say, hey, take this. I have a question. You did say you were hoping that somebody come by and smoke you out a bowl. Is marijuana a good way to treat a lot of addictions? Could it be helpful? I mean, I don't know if it's strong enough, or if that's the word, or if it's prevalent enough to help.
Well,
with
no, it
addiction,
isn't, but it does help. So after I got clean, after I was in the progressive movement for a long time, I got offered a job managing a cannabis store in Washington State a year after it was passed legally. So then I got to go to school and learn about the cannabinoid system in your body and how cannabis works in your system. And yes, I absolutely believe that cannabis is a medicine, that it does help with opiate withdrawals. No, it's not going to take withdrawals away, but it's going to ease some of the suffering. Your stomach's going to calm down. Your anxiety is going to get better. Your body's not going to hurt as much. I see it as a tool for many problems like cancer. I am an absolute diehard believer that, cannabis fights cancer cells. I've seen it numerous times in my life, especially working in the cannabis industry. And I'm hoping in the future we can talk a lot about my cannabis activism and some of the amazing, crazy things I've got to do since I joined the cannabis movement for federal legalization. But I just want to give a brief rundown of Kratom because I brought it up. I take Kratom. Kratom saved my life, and I'll probably have to do just a special on Kratom just because there's so much to talk about with Kratom. I don't advocate that anybody who isn't a dire opiate addict take Kratom. I absolutely don't. I believe that it's addictive, like coffee is addictive or nicotine is addictive. And but I don't believe that it's dangerous at all. And right now we have a major battle going on with our new FDA department, Biden's, HHS, Health and Human Services Director. So they came after us in 2016 and they brought a lot of pseudoscience. There's never been one documented case of Kratom death that they can contribute to Kratom. Now, there's extenuating comorbidities, right? Like, oh, this person had a bad heart or they were on cocaine or something else, but you can never pinpoint it on Kratom. Well, they've been trying to for a long time. And we're going to get into all of the, why that is. It's just like with anything, right? Marijuana was banned because they didn't want hemp growing across the country is really what reefer madness came down to. And we have to look at the history of drugs to understand how they're being weaponized against us right now. And, there's all out war against Kratom. It's mostly coming from the Democrats. The Republicans protected us for the last 4 years. But now we're going to have to get back into the fight. But we actually beat the DEA back because they brought so much pseudoscience and they didn't give us a public comment period. And so that's the first time I've ever seen a victory in any of these movements I've been in. But so someday, hopefully we can get into that in one of the future shows.
We will. We're coming up to 7:30 right now, the 90 minutes we want to do for the show. Want to apologize to everybody out there that we're having a little technical difficulties. You can see it's freezing up on our Rokfin. Hopefully on your Rokfin, it was really good. It looks like it's getting a good
a good signal over there, but we'll figure everything out as best we can to try to get this thing working. I think that's a good place to stop for today too, as well. We went through your whole journey. We kind of seen what happens when it comes to the way your doctors prescribe this stuff. We see the death it causes and whatnot. And more than anything, after doing the first show, I want to say thank you for surviving. Thank you for making it out. And I think we should do everything out there to elevate your story, elevate your knowledge, to get this out there, and maybe we can actually save some more lives out there. But even our followers out there who've never understood what it is about addiction, just to be more compassionate, understanding, whatnot. Once again, I don't think we have the answers necessarily. I think you found some success with Kratom, but there's more to it. I think when it comes to this whole situation too, as well as why a person's feeling the way they are and whatnot, you talked about your suicide thoughts and shit. And this is why we need Medicare for all too, as well, because we need also therapy. It's a fucked up world. There's so many different avenues the devil can get you. And I think it's best we go out there and we try to find the ways that we can fight forward as a society, but just realizing what they're doing to us above. Those doctors out there that are prescribing stuff, those pharmaceutical reps that know what their drugs are doing and stuff, are getting away with this because it's a capitalist system where they can lobby people to make sure that the laws are in their favor, to make sure that their punishments or their fines are small enough where it doesn't affect their bottom line, and they can go along with slowly killing people, trapping people in nightmares. And as a society, we all have to understand the 99% that we're all in this shit together, that it's a blender of death against us, because all they want to do is profit off of every little thing out there, including our bodies. And we are the lab rats right now, and we need to understand that.
Always have been.
Yeah, I know. Well, now their game's up. Now more people are catching on. I think more people are seeing what's going on. They don't trust their government, and by for good reasons and stuff, because the reason why a lot of these big pharma, big tobacco was able to get away with shit for so long, right? Is because they lobby the government and they pay them off. And in a capitalist system, everything's for sale, including your body and your soul. And they're showing you that you're not a person, you're not a human being, you're a number, you're an addict, you're a dollar sign. And they're going to take advantage of that system every chance they get.
Well, I just want to say to anybody out there watching that right now is in the throes of battling for your life, keep fighting. Don't pull that trigger. Don't, just, you never know what tomorrow could bring. I never thought I would find an end. I figured death would be the end for me. And I don't call myself a recovering addict. I'm an addict. I will always be an addict. I'm just functioning now to where I'm maintaining, and I don't want to do that with big pharma. And if the FDA and the DEA come in and they take Kratom away, they're going to force me and 1.7 million, I think, that are on Kratom to have to look to alternative methods to stay well. And we know that a lot of people will turn to heroin and fentanyl, which I hope we can do a whole show on fentanyl. You guys need to understand how dangerous fentanyl is, and it is fucking everywhere now. But just keep fighting, because you never know what tomorrow can bring. Something can change for you.
All right, let's get out of here, Oz. Thank you so much for engineering the show. You got anything to say before we get into the White Rabbit?
Yeah, I just want to thank Zoxovoxovix for their Super Ray. I appreciate it very much, and you guys did great tonight. We're getting better every time we do this, so we will have that tech issue taken care of next week.
Yay.
Good night, guys.
Thanks for listening.